Welcome to the Urgency of Awareness podcast. I'm Jody Farr.
And I'm your girl, Nita Renee.
Join us as we take the topic of health, grab those concepts that we learned in season 1 and apply them as we discuss things like food, where we live, how that affects our health, and the dietitian field.
And as always, capacity builders, we're going to be looking at this from an individual, community, and institutional lens.
Come on in.
Come ride with us.
Episode. Okay, listeners, picture what is your favorite meal? You got it pictured? Now, when you're picturing your favorite meal, do you think it has good food in it or bad food in it? Your favorite meal, good food or bad food or both? And how do our institutions and our policies within our societal system, how do they shape what we even think or define as good food and bad food? Today's episode, come on in.
In this very important and fun conversation today, we are joined by JC and Leslie. I am so excited to have you guys part of the conversation. Would you please introduce yourself?
Sure. Well, so my name is Leslie Bonci. I am a registered dietitian, like queen, but it's okay. And I mean, my philosophy about eating is this. It is permission over omission. This is what we have to do. We all need to nourish ourselves, and that is the focus on eating instead of depleting the body. The other thing that's critically important is enough with this foodies, let's be foodies. And all the different ways that we define that, which is as simple as a fork, a food, our mouth, let's call it a day.
Let's go.
I love it. And I'm JC Lippold, trauma-informed personal trainer, yoga teacher, meditation teacher, on the movement side of the human experience. And when it comes to food for me, I was the kid who ate corn dog and a Klaus and pickle spear after school every day for 2nd and 3rd grade. So when it comes to routine and habit and home, that's where I start.
Yeah, right on.
Awesome. Well, you two are the experts, and so I'm going to throw it right over to you. What is a bad food and what is a good food? Because when I think of my favorite meal, it includes gravy, and not that store-bought stuff. We're talking grandma, and there's got to be a lot of grease drippings in it type of gravy. So I'm thinking that's falling under bad food, But then is that just the messages in the societal system that tell me it's bad? Is that, policies, institutions? What are you guys' thoughts on that?
So the issue with this is we want to oversimplify and we want to put into buckets. So this is the food that has carbohydrate, and this is the food that has protein. This is the food that has fat. That's not the way we eat. You don't walk in those aisles in the grocery store. Hey, let's go down the fat aisle. With this.
I would know if there was one. I'd be like,
We don't do that because it doesn't exist. Food is complex. Food is a mix of nutrients. So most likely you did not just have that gravy. The gravy was on something. Right. The gravy might have been on a biscuit, the gravy on a potato, the gravy on meat.
Honestly, Leslie, it was on everything. It was on
there we go. Or the gravy right in the mouth.
Exactly.
No matter what.
Thank you.
But this is what food is supposed to be. And it was grandma's. So it brought back that memory. Isn't that what makes food good? Because we smile when we think about a food. It's not just the matzo ball, which to me is like, oh my God, sitting like lead. What is that? And 5 weeks later, it's still there with a life of its own. But nonetheless, grandma made it. So there it was. And that was great.
And that was good.
So, these things that we have, that's just like this overarching categorization of it's in this column or it's in that column. And no, it's not. Because guess what? There's the middle column. And things interact. And sometimes they intersect, and sometimes they duke it out. But all of those are components. We eat macronutrients, that's protein, carbohydrate, fat. We eat hydros, that's fluid. We eat micronutrients, that's vitamins and minerals. And we eat phytonutrients, which is plants. So all those things, not one, all.
The complexity of it.
Yes.
And so putting in good and bad simplifies it.
Yes.
Too much. For you, JC?
I think so much of how I eat in terms of the times in which I eat. So often in the fitness world, like I am a big fan of protein drinks. Why? Because after I work out, you go, how many grams of protein are you supposed to have a day, to so on and so forth. I know I'm not going to do that. I know I'm not going to be the person who meal preps on a Sunday night. That's not me. That's not my story. That's not my history. But if I have things that can conveniently meet me in my day and keep me moving, I go, wow, that makes sense to me. But also this, being in the fitness world, so many things. I always apologize to my RDNs for all the advice that fitness people provide because they're going like, well, here's what you should eat. Here's what you should eat. I go, I'm the person who will have a Mountain Dew publicly. So people go, wow, the fitness guy is drinking a sugary soda. And I go, yeah, and I feel okay about that. I will eat fast food loudly and proudly and conveniently because people need to know that that's okay.
Yeah.
So the idea of good and bad in all the conversations that are meeting the consumer, meeting the average person, if we get rid of that, we can start maybe having a conversation about what is good for them in the moment that they're in.
And some of those messages come from the institutions, such as, dietitians, such as the fitness world, that talk about a calorie intake and an outtake, and if I'm hearing you right, try to simplify it too much.
Much too simple. Everybody's body is going to be different in terms of the response that they have to the food items. It is not as simple as eat a certain number of calories and burn a certain number of calories. It doesn't work that way because we also need to think about what is food doing for our body. And that is a head to toe benefit on the body. It is energy. It is function. It may be preventative depending upon what it is that we're eating, but it is not good or bad. It isn't that way. And the problem with this as well is that things that get lumped into that category is, if it's in a can, if it's in the bag, if it's in a box, if it's in a jar. I have cans on my shelf. I have boxes on my shelf. I have bags on my shelf and jars. And there's nothing about that makes it a bad food. That's essential because that adds to my repertoire of what I have available in order to be able to feed the saint and myself. But this is important. So this judging that goes on is like, and what were you thinking? It isn't realistic. And if the recommendations are not realistic, you can't even do that for a day, let alone for any time other than that. And it makes me just absolutely irate when we talk about things this way and then make everybody feel very, very bad. Well, I couldn't live up to those standards. Therefore, why should I even try? Hopeless before we even begin.
Yeah.
What does that accomplish? Zero.
Yeah.
And go ahead.
No, I'm sorry. I was going to say this kind of makes me think of how we made, thinking about cultural when we talk about food. I'm thinking about how we put people in different class when we talk about food, what's good and what's bad. And it makes me remember times when, because we grew up as the working poor, that you mentioned. And so we would stand in line at the closest Catholic church, and they would give us like multi meal and butter and cheese. And my mom would bring those things home, and we'd all have to line up, by the way, because you can only get one of those things. She needed it to go a long way. And so she'd take those things home and make some of the best meals that were satisfying and also sat on us in a way where we would feel full for an extended amount of time, right? Right? She used to tell us, I can't feed you every hour on the hour, right? And I think about how when we label things good and bad, what we do to people from different cultures in different places around the world when we say this is good and this is bad. One of my family's favorite meals is we do a catfish fry every first of the year. Lots of people will tell you catfish is bad. They're the bottom feeders. They eat everything. They're the dirty fish. But when we cook it up, I'm getting a lot of nourishment, right, with that. And my mom balances it out with some salad and some spaghetti, right, get a little starch in there. But I wonder how in the nutrition world we talk about and get to know about people and their culture before we get to talk dishing out those kind of prescriptions of, right, what you should be doing.
That's why it's tradition first in the kitchen before you talk about the prescription, before you talk about the intuition. Better happens. We better think about that tradition, and we need to honor that because right, that's what makes us all unique. It's what makes our table so unique. Whether it's Mediterranean diet, that's not one way of eating. That's 21 ways of eating.
You preaching.
Yes, I mean this is so critically important. So we want to simplify too much or assume that every Latinx, every Hispanic individual is eating the same way. No, they are not eating the same way, and they never will, and they should not. It's just absolutely wrong to do that. So if we start with that, or okay, you need to lower your blood pressure. We'll never eat this again, but that's how I season my food. So what am I supposed to do now? And this food has no taste. So see, you didn't even respect what it is that I want to eat. So am I going to listen to you? No, because you've insulted me. Not helpful. Not helpful to do that.
And the society, with both of you, talking the societal system, how we gear it to the normalized dominant, like the Mediterranean diet. The Mediterranean, yeah,
Come on.
it got brown and white folks and a whole bunch of foods, but every time I see it advertised, it is the normalized dominant. It is the white, the foods and it's white pictures of white folks, pictures of white, food or European food, and it's like, but like you said, it cases so much, and we don't show that. And then like what you're talking about, we've talked about this before, is the foods that we grew up on that we actually got made fun of for eating. The pork belly, and the tongue, and all these pieces that I love. The chicken gizzards. Don't get me started. I will go out of my way for a chicken gizzard. Okay. Oh my God, to tell you. All right. But now I gotta charge 30. They charge them $35 for what they made fun of me for. I was like, but when normalized dominant changes and it's like, oh, this is okay, then all of a sudden we look at it different. And now I can't believe I'm at a fine restaurant and they got pork belly on the menu for $35, which was, something, but normalized dominant picked it up and said it's good, it's okay, and if you serve it this way, and then it is. And so in our policies and our institutions, as we think about good and bad food, how much of that is coming from that normalized dominant perspective, that our institutions then are saying this is the good way, but it's coming from that normalized dominant perspective. And then not that that's bad, but that's not the only perspective.
Well, and that's, I just heard all three of you just share from a part of your voice. If someone would say catfish is bad, I can hear you be like, actually,
right,
here's why it's not. Like the giblets. Here is why it's not bad. Because it's coming from a different place of where it's nourishing you, how it's fueling you. And again, yes, it's like, give us guidelines, give us an understanding, give us knowledge, give us things that we can react to. But at the end of the day, what is the guideline on home cooked meals? Or what is the guideline on grandma's specialty or on the holiday special? Because we know, there's science here too, on what happens when we can enjoy those things in the way that it nourishes us in a different way. We often don't raise that same voice when we are being pushed against the normalized dominant in something like, oh, am I supposed to eat this vegetable or this vegetable? Like if it's not coming from a place of our core, of our genesis, the amount that we're going to fight against that is a lot less. So all of a sudden we hear it's like processed food bad. I go, again, I'm a person, I was and I am kind of a fussy eater. If I can have a food that is processed in a way to get me things that I would not get otherwise, thank you.
Right.
Thank you. Do you want me to be healthy, or do you want me to be food moral, highbrow, doing the thing that society says I'm supposed to be doing? I think we want our society to be healthy.
And that both, and it's not that one is worse or the bad way and one's the good way, but understanding that there are, like you said, processed foods. Like in growing up in my neighborhood, if you got breakfast, you're lucky, right? But so if you got a bowl of cereal with milk, I mean, the vitamins and nutrients in cereal processed, but then if you put milk to it, that's way better than if you have nothing, or, but yet I'll hear how it's always bad. Well, I get if you have a variety of choices that, cereal might not be the best if you have a variety of choices, but if you don't have that, it does this meet that need very well in that space, but the messages, and then I want to think about our policies too, in our institutions, how they contribute to the good, the definition of good food and bad food. Our policies of, I moved outside my neighborhood into a very upper middle class neighborhood. I got to drive. Like I have to drive to find fast food. And I say like 2-3 miles. If you dig into that, there was policies about how close fast food and how many could be towards me. My old neighborhood, oh my gosh. I mean, I could walk to 6. you know?
Yeah.
And so the policies that allow access to different types of food, old neighborhood, a corner store was the grocery store. Now I got 4 grocery stores, 2 have carpet. You know what I mean? It's like,
Whoa.
yeah, carpet. Yes, I know. I'll bring you over. Yes, right. But and the variety and the choices there are so different. And what we always, so our policies influence heavily what we have access to, but what's in each neighborhood, and then what we deem that. Because as we talked about before, is oftentimes we give more asset-based descriptors, more positive descriptors to normalize dominant. So unintentionally, we are often talking about middle class being better and being good. And so then if you are working or underclassed, then, well, you must have done something wrong. You must have not budgeted well. You must have, so it's bad. So if those things are in that neighborhood, then that must be bad food and this must be good food. There's all those little things that we experience that also feed into the good and bad messaging of food and the way then it becomes marketed.
Yeah. I wish I didn't have I wish I had 6 grocery stores.
Right.
3 grocery stores.
Right.
We got more fast food than you can shake a stick at. I can order a burger and it'll be to my house in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
But it takes a little bit longer when I say order my groceries, if you will, right? But there's a grocery store right down the street. So when we talk about that, we talk about access, we talk about health, people are making decisions based on what they have access to. We've talked about that before. In a family that's a working class, poor mother, single in my neighborhood is quite likely after she's worked till 7, 8 o'clock at night, going to roll through McDonald's drive-through. She's going to get everybody something to eat. By the time they get home, they would have eaten that. She can get them homework done, bath, bed. She doesn't have time in her mind to stop, do homework, bath, bed, and cook a full meal. And the things that she might need to cook that full healthy meal might not even be available to her, right? So you guys making a very good point about access, right? Historically, we talk about how our systems intentionally place things, right? By design, my neighborhood has all those fast food restaurants, right? That's not an accident at all, right? The wealth that's built from that is built. We know this country loves to build wealth on the backs of poor people. So that's exactly what's happening.
And I'm not saying I want listeners to know, may there be more nutritional value in a meal that, you know, that is not McDonald's, you know, I guess I have to have Leslie answer that, you know, I got to assume that, there might be well, when we say this is the best or the better or the right way, we are setting people up for a whole bunch of shame. And then we are perpetuating that you're not doing it right. And so how can our institutions and our policies, how can we become aware of this, but then also start to change how we message things? I was so impressed. I finally found someone this person online who writes about a recipe and says, here's the 3 ways you can make it. And used you know, this way was more expensive, it had ingredients I wasn't even sure of, and I was like, I ain't going to the store to get, I don't know what that is, you know what I mean? And the middle one, I had most of the ingredients, and then they did it a 3rd way with ingredients that would be from cans and boxes. And I was like, why don't we have all our recipes like this, you know, so that it's accessible to everybody, and even say, hey, here's the benefits here, here, and here, you know, so that we're not sharing our message at the cost of excluding and perpetuating that shame.
And when you're looking at a recipe like that and you were to do a recipe analysis on it, guess what? They would all be the same. It's not about the nutritional analysis, it's the perception. Well, I did something, I used it out of a box or bag or jar, therefore shame on me. Instead of I did this all, I smelted the ore myself, or whatever it is that people do to feel like more virtuous because I did it myself. Therein lies the difference. And that's what people aren't realizing. They're wanting to just look beyond that or just judge themselves or guilt themselves to say, because I didn't do it from scratch, it doesn't count. And I am not worth it.
And I was very impressed that it has how they wrote it. They didn't word it. They didn't set it. Yeah, they didn't set it up like, oh, here's the best way, here's the other way, here's this way. They didn't even have that small. There, you know, I think the only thing they tied to it was time. You know, if you have the time, here is, you know, I think that's the only thing they tied it to. So that was impressive, that it wasn't like, oh, here's the 3 ways, but this one is really the best, you know? So even how, if we offer those choices, making sure we're not unintentionally still writing in a way that's saying this is the best way to
Mhm.
do it. But that allows everybody to have access to that recipe. It gets us to think differently about it as
And I think the
well.
one other component of that is not just the recipe itself, but how is it prepared?
Mm.
Do you only have a bowl?
Yeah.
Do you have a microwave? Do you have a stove? Because depending upon what equipment, what you have available, what
Mhm.
appliances you have,
Mhm.
is going to govern what it is that you choose to make.
Well, and a step further, so again, in some of our triangles or identities, we don't have access to that. In some of our triangles, we can't use that. I have a friend, she's like, I can't use a can opener. Her hands are not going to function and do that. And so she can't use that piece. And so and for some of so not only the equipment to do it, but then
Right. The
are
ability.
are
Yes.
we able to do it as well? But taking into consideration all those other perspectives.
I mean, again, back to the idea of like the institution who is setting the policy.
Mm.
What are they attempting to create?
Mm.
Citizens who are, yes, healthy, yes, nourished, yes, educated, but also confident, clear of their understanding of their vocation, of their potential. If we think about what this is actually attempting to do, it's more than saying good, bad.
Mm.
It's saying, here are the pathways for you within your socioeconomic, cultural, whatever reality, fill in the blank. Here's how you can be full, enough, seen,
Mm.
nourished. If you are the parent, taking care of said child, as opposed to be like, I'm not doing enough. I am like, what these individuals need to be thinking about is well more than the
Mm.
good, bad.
Yeah.
Yes.
But what is the full body impact, the full spirit impact, the full
Mm.
life impact on who we're speaking to? Again, like those 3 recipes. Here are 3 pathways for many different people to arrive at a place where they can all of those things.
Mhm.
Bravo.
Yeah. Beautiful.
And even to think about, can we write recipes that say, put in your favorite starch or the starch? I like when you said your tradition. Can you put in
Yeah.
the starch from your and then it could give examples from your tradition.
Yeah.
Can enter this from your tradition.
Yeah.
But then honoring, then I have attachment to that recipe,
Yeah.
and I feel I can complete it.
Yeah.
But oftentimes, our messaging from our institutions, whether it's the dietitian field, the health field, is that there's one certain way. And as you take a step back and look at it, you start to realize it's really rooted in normalized dominant experience and ways, and how much that then misses so much of so many people and their experience.
Mhm.
And or you're going to take something out. You're not going to replace. You have somebody who might go through the effort to make that food that somebody has recommended that they make a certain way, and nobody likes it.
Mhm.
Right.
Mhm.
And then you end up throwing it away, and this is money down the drain, and you become more frustrated. And why should I ever listen to that again? Because look what happened.
Mhm.
Look what the outcome was of
Mhm.
that recommendation.
Mhm.
That's not helpful.
You didn't grow up in the same house I grew up. You were going to sit at that table and you're going
That-
to eat that food.
That's what I was thinking.
No,
I
listen.
was like, what do you mean
No.
you didn't finish it? Oh, you're going to finish it?
You're gonna finish
You're going to
it.
finish it that night or tomorrow. It's going to be finished. It's going to be finished.
I have horror stories. Yes, my 92-year-old mother, still alive. Not everything up here, but still alive. When my dad would travel, she would experiment
Oh,
on my brother and I. Yes, so we
beautiful.
had cottage cheese loaf. I don't even know what that was, but I still have
Oh.
nightmares. And when our older son was with my brother, and he opened up my mother's trunk of the car to get the groceries out, and he said, "Oh, there's kitty litter. Nanny must be trying a new recipe." So see, this is exactly. I know. I do know. Yes.
Wow. We'll have to talk about that offline. I have so many questions.
Right. Yeah. If
So
we ever
much
have an
more.
outtake, I would suggest you listen. We'll follow up.
Yeah.
What happened with the kitty litter? What was made? I know we're trying to step back from good and bad food, but kitty litter, okay, that might
I might make the bad list.
Yeah, I don't know. We're just trying to avoid a bad list, but yes. But for as we do these podcasts, we take different professions and we just start to look at, hey, how does these normalized dominant identities pop up, and how do our institutions, perpetuate this? And I think in the health field, this is one of the ways many of our institutions, whether it's fitness, dietitians, hospitals, but so many institutions often sometimes just very bluntly and intentionally telling us this way is the best way, and not realizing how much that can exclude so many people, and not only that, but perpetuate the shame, and that shame then the chances of me ever coming back to try it again
Yeah.
is so much smaller. But then also looking at our policies, you know, how are our policies affecting what we determine as good and bad, and and what we have access to, taking a look at those.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow, what an important conversation. And it was fun, which is what I set everybody up for today, right? And as we close, this is us building capacity in our individual selves, in our institutions, and our communities. Thank you for all being here. Thank you guys for being here. And we'll see you next time.